In 2011, this job posting was uploaded to Craigslist, asking for someone to watch over a patch of farmland and feed a few cows somewhere in southern Ohio in exchange for $300 a week. It ended up being one of the most notorious cases of ad-related crimes of the decade. The ad read, "Caretaker position for farm, southern Ohio. Simply watch over a 688-acre patch of hilly farmland and feed a few cows. You get $300 a week and a nice 2-bedroom trailer. Someone older and single preferred, but we'll consider all. Relocation a must. You must have a clean record and be trustworthy. This is a permanent position. The farm is used mainly as a hunting preserve, is overrun with game, has a stocked 3-acre pond, but some beef cattle will be kept. Nearest neighbor is a mile away. The place is secluded and beautiful. It will be a real getaway for the right person. Job of a lifetime. If you are ready to relocate, please contact ASAP. Position will not stay open. Include name, age, phone number, and email, please." Some of the men who responded to the ad were interviewed directly by a man who identified himself as Jack, along with his 16-year-old accomplice, Brogan Rafferty, whom he referred to as his nephew. The candidates who made it to the interview stage said they didn't notice anything strange about Jack or his so-called nephew, and that they just looked like a couple of farmers who needed someone to look after their land. Scott Davis, a 48-year-old man who was interviewed by Jack over breakfast at a little restaurant in Marietta, Ohio, was the second to last candidate to go through the screening process for the job. After breakfast, he rode with Jack and Brogan to a remote wooded area near Akron. Immediately after getting out of the car to survey his surroundings, Davis heard a clicking sound. He turned around to see Jack pointing a gun at him. It was then that he realized that the click he heard had been the gun misfiring, but before he could react, Jack shot him in the elbow. Despite the wound, Davis managed to escape. He ran for his life for 7 hours through the woods, eventually finding a house and asking the owner for help. They called 911, and news about the incident began to spread. 5 days later, police received a call from a woman named Deborah Bruce, who claimed that her 51-year-old twin brother David Pauly had responded to the same job ad on Craigslist. According to Deborah, her brother had driven from Virginia to Ohio with all his belongings in his car, in the hopes that the new job would work out for him and help him get back on his feet. Tragically, a couple days later, police found the body of David Pauly, along with the body of another victim by the name of Ralph Geiger, buried in the woods close to where Scott Davis had been shot in the elbow. At this point in the case, investigators were able to identify a pattern in the victims. Jack and Brogan targeted homeless, down on their luck, or otherwise vulnerable middle-aged men with limited family ties and lured them to an isolated location under the appearance of a life-changing job opportunity, only to later rob them of all their belongings and shoot them on the spot. Their hope was that because of their few family ties, their disappearance would go unnoticed, giving Jack and Brogan enough time to bury the bodies and get rid of the evidence. This pattern explains why certain candidates were rejected during the interview process, such as 58-year-old Ron Sanson, a former Navy officer with a college degree, and an unnamed woman in her 20s who had also applied for the job. During the investigation, police traced the Craigslist ad, which led them to the home of a man named Joe Bice in Akron, Ohio. He denied posting the ad and claimed that it was probably posted by the man who rented out his basement space. When police asked Joe Bice for the name of his tenant, he responded that he only knew him as Dutch. Investigators were able to track Dutch down thanks to a phone call that he made to Joe Bice, unaware that his landlord had been in contact with the police. On November 16, 2011, police arrested Dutch and identified him as 52-year-old Richard Beasley. Scott Davis immediately confirmed that this was the same man who had interviewed him at the restaurant and shot him in the woods. Apparently, Richard Beasley had fled from the police and used different identities to avoid being detected, even using the names of some of his victims. Around that time, police also arrested Brogan Rafferty, Richard Beasley's teenage accomplice. At the time, Brogan was a 16-year-old high school student from Stowe, Ohio, whom Beasley had mentored and taken under his wing. Police searched Rafferty's house and found several weapons, as well as a disturbing poem hidden in his computer files from August 16, 2011. The chilling poem read, "We took him out to the woods on a humid summer's night. The loud crack echoed and I didn't hear the thud." Investigators later determined that the poem described the murder of Ralph Geiger, one of the victims police had found in the woods. A few days later, on November 25th, a fourth victim, a 47-year-old man named Timothy Kern, was found dead in the woods behind a mall in Akron. In 2013, Brogan Rafferty was sentenced to life without parole, and Richard Beasley was sentenced to execution after being found guilty of 27 total accounts of aggravated murder, aggravated robbery, kidnapping, and possession of illegal weapons. This innocent-looking job ad ended up being one of the most notorious luring posts in the site's history, and it played a strong contributing role to the sketchy connotation that Craigslist carries nowadays.